one Almighty God. As we come together today to celebrate the gift of 30 years of the social weather stations in the Philippines, we ask you to give us fresh insight into the condition of our human society and to know how you wish us to contribute to the future of this society. We ask you to give us the grace not to be complacent, the grace not to accept that in our society there are people who are homeless, people who are hungry and thirsty, people who are illiterate and uneducated, people who are victimized by corruption and political ineptness, people who are discriminated against because of religious belief, people who are excluded from the circles of those who make the decisions for this country, and excluded from the benefits of society which they control. Give us the grace to envision a society as you wish it. Jesus Christ, the Son of Man, the prophet, spoke to us about a society in which you reign. For that he was put to death. Whatever it costs for us, Lord, help us to envision the society which, in the end, we all want to bring about. The common good for which we are all willing to work in freedom. The common good which integrates our individual needs and personal desires and is achieved through ongoing assessment of where we are in truth, ongoing reformulation of what our common good is, and renewed commitment of ourselves to achieving it. It is in this context that we thank you for the gift of 30 years of the social weather stations addressing our myriad social concerns in a spirit of truth, working relentlessly to see the truth as people see it from their many diverse viewpoints, using the tools of social science and the method of ongoing social surveys to bring the truth inexorably to light and to enlighten those who in democratic freedom and responsibility would address these social concerns in pursuit of the common good. Gathered in the joy of this celebration with the men and women of the social weather stations, we ask you for eyes that see, for hearts that feel, for minds that understand. We can be so blind, forcing our prejudices on truth we fear to see, and our biases on truth we fabricate. We can be so callous, incapable of feeling the suffering of people we exclude from our ambit of experience and blind ourselves from seeing. We can be so obtuse, unable to see the connectedness between the poor and ourselves, between their deprivation and our privilege, their powerlessness and our power, their exclusion and our responsibility for the society in which we live. Teach us, Lord, to see society first as it is, but also as it ought to be. Give us the minds and hearts to develop a genuine social conscience. Give us the energy and resources to get the data. Get the data. Get the data. The ability to analyze it with wisdom and the courage to act in wisdom. Finally, Lord, we ask you to send more laborers into the social sciences. Bless Dr. Mahar Mangahas and those who have dedicated and continue to dedicate their lives and careers to the social weather stations with an abiding sense of consolation in their achievement and in their service. But send more laborers, more social scientists into your vineyard, that what has been begun may be continued, that what continues may thrive, all in pursuit of a human society in which we all flourish in freedom, prosperity, and peace. Amen.
Good afternoon, that's fine? Good afternoon. Assalamualaikum. Peace be unto all. Thanks be to God for granting SWS life for 30 years, which was unplanned, since SWS was actually established for a 2-year project of preparing for an election in 1987, not 1986. This is a celebration tonight, not a symposium or any kind of academic event, but a party for us to enjoy. So allow me to welcome and thank all of you, at the risk of sounding like a sauna, following somewhat the order of the program. Father Joel Tabora, SJ, friend since the Bishop's Business Conference days in the early 1980s, closer to 35 years ago. He has put social surveying in the work agenda of Ateneo de Davao University, as he did at Ateneo de Naga University years ago with SWS inputs both times. Thank you for your homily, Father Joel, all the way from Davao for us. Okay. Chairman Mohager Iqbal, your presence underscores the duty of opinion polls to give special respect to minority groups. Democracy is for all, not only for the majority. The SWS motto, quod homines tot sententiae, means as many opinions as there are people. SWS is gratified for its survey capacity to be of assistance in furthering peace with our Moro sisters and brothers, and to work together as well with Secretary Guindeles, who's on the other end of the table working for the same thing. Allow me to advocate, Chairman Iqbal, that the Bangsamoro develop its own independent capability to regularly generate scientific statistics about the conditions and opinions of its peoples. Let us know how we can help you. Judge Raul Pangalangan of the International Criminal Court, you bring honor to the country and also to SWS by being a fellow and by joining our celebration. Your presence recalls the historic 1984 Philippine Bar Association survey on the state of the legal profession, which we did. Sponsored by the Asia Foundation, by the way. We appreciate how jurisprudence accommodates many opinions, not only the concurring ones, but also the dissenting ones. Thank you also, Raul, for the supportive stance of the newspaper of which you are still the publisher, I am told, and I am still a columnist, towards the role of open public opinion polling in a democracy, as evidenced in the editorial Afraid of Surveys, Inquirer, April 10, 2015, which I suspect was written by you and or another one of our guests today. Steve Root, fellow of long standing, but on leave while we await his retirement from the Asia Foundation. Long ago, he was an academic researcher into the opinions of indigenous peoples in the Cordilleras. Now he's an action researcher into the opinions of the Bangsamoro peoples. In a little while, he will lead the launching of the new TAF SWS monograph, quote, Filipino Public Opinion on the Bangsamoro Basic Law and the Mama Sapano Incident, quote, based on 2 national surveys in March 2015, in June 2015, and on a special survey in core territories and nearby areas of the Bangsamoro in February 2015. We need more of these national surveys. Welcome to our many distinguished guests. So many I cannot possibly mention all, but especially those representing our clients and sponsors who are the basis for our long-term sustainability. SWS does surveys for the Department of Social Welfare and Development. I was expecting ASEC Lila Shahani, but maybe she's not yet here on account of the traffic. She would be the highest official of the DSWD to come today. Surveys dealing with the programs of Pantawid Pamilya and Kalahi Seeds. So very important projects. SWS is also doing substantial work for the Millennium Challenge Account Philippines. We are expecting the head, Marivic Año-Nuevo. I did not notice if she arrived yet, but not, huh? Ah, oh, I cannot see from this distance. Would, huh? All right, yeah. Thank you very much for trusting us on your survey work. And of course, for the Asia Foundation, not only Steve Root, but Kai Johnson is here, and is Maribel Buena Obra here also? We must give her special mention. There, Maribel, please. Thank you so for all these years. Now, I did not notice if he had arrived because he's on the confirmed list. But I want to especially mention the architect of SWS new five-story building. I'm glad. Now under construction, the famous Felino June Palafox. He did not blink when told of the SWS budget constraint. The SWS building design included in the Palafox gift calendar is June's way of advertising that his company also does modest projects like ours. So now let me proceed to the other key SWS fellows, starting with today's MC, Linda Luz Guerrero, SWS board member, vice president, chief operating officer, economist, untiring direct and multitasking manager, the no-nonsense entrepreneur behind SWS Financial Sustainability, expert in cross-country surveys. Hasmina Cunha, SWS board member and corporate secretary, who will introduce our guest speaker later. Outstanding psychologist of the University of the Philippines and of Miriam College. Philanthropist who donated 2 hectares of hilly land in Tanay, Rizal to let SWS people commune with nature. Where is Dr. Ned? Huh? Well, let me mention Dr. Ned Roberto. He's the only one known with the doctor. Dr. Ned, SWS board member and treasurer, the guru of Philippine market research, socio-economic classification expert. He discovered that the most staple consumer product for housewives coping with hard times is not rice, it's soap. Tony Lavinia, SWS board member, lawyer, environmentalist, Dean of the Ateneo School of Government, veteran battler for the sustainability of planet Earth. Jorge Joji Tigno, SWS board member, political scientist, University of the Philippines, Diliman, expert on overseas labor migration and the Asian Barometer. Dennis Arroyo, board member of SWS, economist, consultant of the ADB, World Bank, and NEDA, expert on conditional cash transfers and many other programs. Welcome to Balik SWS Founding Fellow, Teti Sabrera Mangahas. International labor expert who did the original study of self-rated poverty based on a pilot survey in Batangas province in 1974 as part of the seminal Social Indicators Project of the Development Academy of the Philippines in 1973-75. That was 40 years ago, making her a Ruby Jubilarian of that first project, which was a conceptual one. Another Ruby Jubilarian is SWS fellow Ruping Alonzo, also here, who did the original work on indicators of learning. Their work is in the 1976 DAP book, Measuring Philippine Development, which is in the CD of major research references of SWS that we are distributing today. It's part of your kit. That's out of print already. We had a confirmation, but I do not see him yet, from another SWS founding fellow, Ping de Jesus. Jose Ping de Jesus. Is he there? No, that's DJ de Jesus, another SWS fellow. He was the executive vice president of the DAP in 1981-83 when it did its experimental social weather stations project. The name was already there, but it was an experiment. That project had another book, Measuring the Quality of Life, a 1982 social weather report, which was ready for publication by DAP in 1983 when it was mysteriously suppressed. Now, the present 30-year-old social weather stations, a trademark name, is an institutionalization of the measurement of the quality of life. As a private, non-stock, non-profit NGO, not a firm, SWS has more freedom to do this than any government agency or corporation. See what happened with our DAP book. It was the lack of academic freedom after the assassination of Ninoy Aquino in August 1983 that doomed the 1981-83 experimental SWS over there, I feel. We were never given an explanation. I thank our Suki, the Andres Bonifacio Choir, directed by SWS fellow Jerry Dadak, who composed the music of the SWS hymn. You'll hear it later. And used poetry by SWS fellow Vladimir Licudine. You'll raise your hand there. And there's Carrie Jane Dayag for the lyrics. And there are more fellows. I can't mention everyone. Welcome to all the SWS fellows here, especially those who are also staff members. As social science researchers and teachers, please make full use of the SWS surveys and recommend them to your colleagues and students. We have here a commissioner of the National Historical Commission, Fe Mangahas, and husband Roger over there, who has a history in Filipino, where she promises me that she has in fact already started using SWS data. By the way, even though this is getting a little bit longer, I and Roger are distantly related on my father's side, which we only found out because Fe, a historian, did the spade work to discover all the links, I don't know how far back. Maraming salamat, Fe. Huh? We have a beloved picture, I think I gave it to you, of my father, Federico Mangahas, a writer, giving a Palanca Prize to Rogelio Mangahas for poetry, I believe. We're proud of you and the family. Welcome to the SWS employees, dozens of regulars, and hundreds of contractuals, alumni, and their loved ones. Thank you for your consistent teamwork and loyalty to the SWS mission. With your help and that of other individuals and institutional friends, SWS will continue to practice and help others to practice statistics for advocacy for another 30 years. Inshallah. Good day.
Distinguished guests, I don't think Mr. Mohagar Iqbal needs an introduction. However, I think he has been introduced so many times through TV, news conferences, etc. However, I think we need to know him a little bit more so that trust can be built and faith in each other's pursuance of peace can be enlarged. So let me introduce to you Mr. Iqbal. He finished his BA in 1969 in political science. He also finished his MA in political science in 1972. And at that time, his thesis was already Muslim Secession Movement in the Philippines. That was the title of his thesis. He did not tell me what school he graduated from, because that's revealing too much. He joined the Moro National Liberation Front in September 1972. I suppose at that time, that was the advent of martial law, 72. So that's an important development, I think. He also joined the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. The first one was National Liberation Front. This one's the Islamic Liberation Front in 1977. But more than that, we will probably know him better if we had an idea of what he wrote in his two books. Bangsamoro, A Nation Under Endless Tyranny. And the second book is The Long Road to Peace, inside the GPH MILF peace process. Now, he did not indicate when he wrote this, but he said it needs an upgrade, an update. Okay, so if we all read this before we met him, maybe we will know him better. And as you know, knowing a person better, we can trust him better. And maybe we will be less anxious about the peace process that is now occupying everybody's mind. Of course, he is a senior member of the MILF Central Committee. He is the chair of the MILF Peace Panel since July 29, 2003, and the chair of the Bangsamoro Transition Country Council, which crafted the Bangsamoro Basic Law. Apparently, recently on the news was the revision of the Bangsamoro Law in the Senate. Let us all hope that God will lead us the road to peace. So may I call on Mr. Iqbal to give us the keynote address.
Thank you very much, Madam Yasmin Aquina, for the introduction. In the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Madam Secretary Teresita Gingdeles, Dr. Mahar Mangahas, Father Joel Tabora, Judge Raul Pangalangan, Dr. Steve Road, and of course, my counterpart in the Government Peace Panel in 2010, Dean Tony Lavinia. Ladies and gentlemen, and good evening. First of all, let me join in congratulating the Social Weather Station, or SWS, on its 30th anniversary. It is an honor and privilege to be with you this evening in order to be able to express my personal as well as the Bangsamoro Transition Commission's felicitation for the continued success of the SWS for the many years to come. But surely this congratulation does not begin and end with SWS as an institution, but the men and women behind this, especially the founding fellows are very much in the forefront of this success. The truth is that what can an inanimate institution can do without the men and women who are the real catalyst for change and success. In particular, allow me to mention Dr. Maher Magahas, currently SWS President and Chief Executive Officer, whom I knew before we met each other at the University of the Philippines not many months ago. His name or pictures come out regularly in the media. It has been asserted that the SWS mission is to regularly do scientific social surveys for the sake of education, so eyes may see social conditions, conscientization, so hearts may feel social problems, and analysis, so minds may understand their solutions. Its vision is to set standards of excellence in the practice of statistics for advocacy within a context of democracy, using a socially oriented agenda, making practical technical innovations, communicating findings to the general public, and teaching the technology to other institutions. Its basic functions include social analysis and research, with stress on social indicators and the development of new data sources, design and implementation of social, economic, and political surveys, including public opinion polls, and the dissemination of research findings through publications, seminars, briefings, and other channels. For any democracy to work, the people must be able, among others, to express their collective opinions and perceptions on the issues that matter them. Without access to their collective opinion and perceptions, the people will not be able to influence policy and government. Indeed, the SWS provides a very important service for Philippine democracy to work, that of providing the Filipino people access to the collective opinions and perceptions of key groups and constituencies. SWS provides a platform to the ordinary Filipino to express his or her views, which otherwise, in the normal course of things, would never be heard. With the work of SWS, the thinking and the feelings of ordinary Filipinos can now shape public policy and programs for the good. Otherwise, only the powerful and the important would have a voice and influence in public policy. For us, and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, who are committed to social change and innovation to uplift the life and future of the Bangsamoro people, we knew from the start that the road to freedom and liberation will be hard and difficult. And precisely, one of the badges of our being dominated as a people is our lack of voice in the great debates of the Republic. And worse, lawmakers and policymakers usually prescribe medicines, so to speak, for our problems, which we know more than anybody else. Look at the two versions of the proposed Bangsamoro Basic Law, now under deliberations in Congress. If they are the ones made into law, surely the whole mess in Mindanao will continue. Thus, one of the aims to our liberation as a people is precisely to acquire once again our voice as a real partner of the Filipino people. For the longest time, our voices have been stifled, muffled, and scrambled. We have been relegated to the margins of the national life and discourse. We have been rendered as we were invisible. That is one of the reasons why we do not have peace in Mindanao. It is because of this struggle to be free that we look positively and welcome the work of institutions like SWS. While we still have to acquire our full voices as a people, the work of the SWS is a good start. With surveys and polls of the SWS on issues relating to the Bangsamoro, slowly and surely the collective voices and opinions of the Bangsamoro, long silenced and disregarded, is now being heard by the rest of the country. Our opinion and thinking on the issues closest to our hearts, our hopes and fears, are now being recognized and valued. For this, we are thankful to the SWS. But providing access to the Bangsamoro people's collective perception is not just good for the Filipino nation. It is also good for us who serve the Bangsamoro people. Knowing the collective opinion of the Bangsamoro aid us in our work of designing and building peace in Mindanao. We are aware that surveys and polls are snapshots of perception of certain segments of the population at a given time, and that furthermore, perception can change. We see the surveys done by SWS as tools for policy and social change for social innovators like the MILF. The purpose of surveys is not to maintain the status quo, but a change for the better. In other words, it is liberation. The work of SWS gives us inputs on how to achieve the goals we have set for ourselves. Surveys are starting points, not end points. We will use them in designing a better future. It is my earnest hope that in the near future, people will start to look at the Bangsamoro people with objectivity and not in disdain, as some people, especially the media, some of whom are still sporting the mindset of the 16th century. After all, we are as human as anybody else, as intelligent or lack of it as anyone in any society. Again, let me congratulate the SWS on its 30th anniversary celebration. May you continue with your work of giving voice to the ordinary people, the voiceless, and the marginalized. Thank you, and again, good evening.
Before SWS, how did we divine public opinion? It was basically a hit or miss exercise, which was actually very much subject to manipulation. We divined the state of public opinion through talk shows or through talking heads on TV. And it was social weather stations which gave it scientific basis, a proper methodology by which to tell how people felt, how people thought, so that we can say that this is the state of public opinion based on facts, based on an independent study by an institution that we trust. But it is more than just reporting the truth. It is also reporting the truth in a way that actually creates new truths. It is not just a passive exercise in reporting. So, for instance, we see that when the political parties choose the list of senatorial candidates, they go by the ranking. And they start eliminating candidates based on the ranking. And that is a ranking determined by surveys, not by whispering among elite politicians talking among themselves. When contributors determine which presidential candidate to support, they also go by the polling surveys. And that is why, in effect, what we have is a public opinion which used to be raw and which used to be mysterious and now made more scientific, and bypassing the traditional entities which mediated what we thought was public opinion. Basically the institutional press, the media.
But let me just close with two examples which show the power of scientific polling. Our computerized voting is actually very non-transparent. It is opaque. And you ask yourself, how did we get to accept the results of the 2010 elections, the first time we had computerized voting? Maybe I'm just speaking for myself. I believed it because it matched the surveys, which was baliktad. Because you do a survey to be able to tell how people will vote. And now people vote, and we believe the vote because it matched the surveys which were conducted before. But let me give you my last example, and I will close on this. Until the surveys on reproductive health, I simply assumed, I believed the lore, that Filipinos are traditional Roman Catholics, we are a very superstitious bunch, and we will take whatever the clergy said. And that therefore there was no hope for RH in the Philippines. And again, it took the surveys to tell us that majority of Filipino Catholics believed in reproductive health. And I go back to my theme, that the surveys reported the truth about Filipino attitudes to reproductive health, but that also created a new truth. It emboldened the legislators to take on reproductive health. It emboldened the politicians, it emboldened the Supreme Court to rule in favor of the RH law. But if you look at it more deeply, it was really a contest between what was essentially an opinion against RH maintained by a Catholic elite, by the Catholic clergy, vis-a-vis an opinion held by majority of Filipinos. And that is why I go back to the very theme developed by our guest speaker, Mr. Chairman Iqbal, that in a deep sense, the exercise of scientific polling is actually an instrument of democracy, in much the same way that it will guarantee fraud, at least for in national elections, and especially in non-transparent and opaque computerized voting. For reproductive health, it actually enabled the majority, the authentic majority of Filipinos who held the opinion in support of RH to prevail over what was essentially a very well-entrenched and very powerful elite. Thank you very much.
How this project started, there are 30,000 Filipino architects, and we're so humbled. SWS had choices who architect to choose from. I think they chose us because of the sustainability, green architecture, and so on. And one challenge we had was our first meetings. They wanted a building that's first class, but the budget is economy class. that was a challenge, both architectural and financial. Another one is we're supposed to translate into architectural form what SWS stand for: social conscience, education, research, inclusive, addressing the whole society of our country, awakening, all of that. How do you translate that into architecture and into a building? And in our contract, I think we're supposed to produce 3 alternative architectural designs. Yeah, Din Lavinia, I think you remember that. I think we came out with 10 alternative designs to be able to arrive at what would best fit to symbolize the institution. And finally, we got groundbreaking 2013 or something. And another challenge, all the cost estimates, it's way beyond the budget. So another challenge again that was given to all the team is if we may have, I don't have to expect from all of us here, or most of us here, I don't call it fundraising. I'll do it to seminaries, convents, and some hospitals. And just like one that I work on is the big church in Ayala Labang. So we did not have enough funds also. So all the donors, as a token of appreciation, they were given columbarium units. And my donation was not as high as the taipans, the tycoons, the cardinal, and so on. So my columbarium unit, when I depart from this world, is not very near the altar. It's very far from the altar. And another one is I think in the Vegan Cathedral. There's a Carta de Honor, 1930 something. And the donors were somebody gave 50 pesos to build the cathedral. Some people give, I think the most was 5,000 pesos, 1930. So the conversation with the board, Dr. Mahar and Linda and the rest was, maybe, I don't usually do this because I'm an architect. I'm not supposed to solicit from building suppliers and contractors and so on. But maybe we're thinking of ways like somebody, and another one from Boston, a big hospital. Somebody donated millions of dollars. So they named the hospital after her. Then a few million, the floor. A few million, thousands maybe, hundreds thousand, the room, the operating room. Then in the lobby, names I could hardly read. And I found out these were nurses of that hospital who donated $100 each. So just thinking aloud now, I'm not part of the program because I'm so worried about the gap in the budget. We may not realize that building. So maybe our tycoon friends, all of us try to convince them, and we'll design a Carta de Honor to honor them. And then maybe the small ones, maybe, again, just thinking aloud, every step of all the staircase, we put your name on every step. Is that too high? Or we name the lobby after you, or the meeting room, the library, and so on. So with that, again, this is I'm not part of the program, but I'm so worried about the budget. Thank you very much.
When June told me that he would publicly announce his commitment to help us raise funds for the building, I said, sure, why not? Yeah. Before I call on Steve, may I recognize si Miss Miriam Coronel Ferrer, who will, later. Sige. So Steve, let us launch our publication. Each of you will have this a copy, but let me have Steve do his work.
So if this is a party, so we don't do the formal things, you know. Thetis Mangahas, who was a survey researcher at the age of 5, obviously, and so on and so forth. Let me begin by pointing out that tonight's theme is Filipiniana, right? Okay, so I wore this for 2 reasons. May dalawang dahilan. Isa, para mainggit si Chairman Iqbal. He always comments on my batik, right? And secondly, to make you glad that I didn't wear another kind of Filipiniana, a bahag from Baguio, right? So, the Social Weather Station's grant that he mentioned in 1984 did not involve me. I was an obscure professor up at UP Baguio at the time. Beginning in the 1990s, I became a fellow of the Social Weather Stations. But in 1999, I had to go on leave because I now give Social Weather Station grants. The Social Weather Stations does all kinds of very interesting surveys. The regular national survey is invaluable, as Chairman Iqbal said, for purposes of democracy. For purposes of debunking myths, one of the best ones is the survey we did of Tacloban survivors, where nobody believed the results, and there was a protest against Social Weather Stations down in Tacloban because the survey showed that the survivors were in fact satisfied with the response of the government. And, you know, the protesters have wanted to critique the response of the government and could not believe social weather stations. I will say one more thing about social weather stations in general that I often say, and that is that the methodology of social surveys is actually widely available. Roughly speaking, any graduate student, or if you're Thetis Mangaha's 5-year-old, can do social surveys. The genius of Mahar Mangahas and the staff of social weather stations is to make it economically viable, to keep doing it for 30 years. That's the miracle, right? Producing accurate results, if you're careful, you can do once or twice, but to do it on and on and on and on for 30 years, you have to have a diversified base. And Mahar, as Mahar says, that also gives you freedom because no one donor is going to tell you what to do. So let me then say that the Asia Foundation has been working with Mahar, with social weather stations, for more than a decade to do special surveys in Mindanao. The bringing voice to the marginalized, bringing the voices of minority groups of any sort is very important. And we have programs in Mindanao of various kinds, and whether it be women or economic development or anti-corruption or local governance, and nowadays with the peace process. And so having a separate sample, quality data, allows you to say what's going on. So, brings us to the publication, okay? The genius, one of the great things about social weather stations is, I mean, these data are less than 2 months old, right? You never get that kind of turnaround from any other institution. And they're passing them out right now, okay? So I'll tell you what's in it so you don't have to read it, okay? We have presented these data to the panels, to the OPOP, but we've also presented, we had a event in UP that was mentioned. The data are clear. The average Filipino citizen was in favor of the peace process until January 26, 2015. That's really what happened. If you look at the data, asking them about the framework agreement, asking them about the comprehensive agreement, you will see that there is favorability. But then when you ask them about the Bangsamoro Basic Law, because the survey took place after Bamasapano, they turned negative. And all through the data you can kind of see that. Pero kahit na, the people of the Bangsamoro are in favor of the basic law, of the various provisions of it. They feel hopeful about the ability of the basic law to bring peace in Mindanao. And shifting back to the general nationwide opinion, people in the nationwide, nationally, believe that the peace process will benefit the Philippines as a whole. People down in Mindanao think it more, but people nationwide do think so. And B, and very importantly, and I've been saying this now for the better part of a decade, people prefer peaceful means to deal with the MILF. It's very important that we say this because it's a myth in this country among the Philippine elite, the kind of public opinion that Raul mentioned. It's a myth that military means are popular. Estrada's all-out war in the year 2000 did not raise his popularity. It's a terrible myth. It's a dangerous myth because it might tempt some politicians to advocate for all-out war. But consistently, even now, the average person prefers peaceful means to military means. So, by bringing these kinds of data to the public attention, we remind everybody that the constituents of the Bangsamoro are in favor. We sometimes hear about it in the halls of Congress that there are doubts or it's not inclusive or not everybody has been consulted, etc., etc., etc. The data are clear. The people of the Bangsamoro want the basic law. We can say that. The challenge, of course, is the negativity that the nationwide politicians face after Mamasapano. So that specifies what we have to deal with, and that gives us a way forward. But I'll just end by saying that the Asia Foundation is pleased once again to partner with Social Weather Stations on an issue of very important national significance, and we look forward to doing so in the future. Sooner or later, I will step down as the Asia Foundation's country representative, and they're threatening me with an office in that new building that June just told us about. So, daghang salamat sa tanan. The book is launched.